Hi everybody, it's Annie from HoopSisters again, and today we are going to do blocks D2, D3, E2, and E3. And here is a picture of my block that I have done, one of them. And I got 3 more to go, so I was hoping you could help me with that. What you're going to need in order to do this block is you will need 2 pieces of 12 by 12 for your background fabric. For your backing fabric, you will need 4 pieces that are 9 by 9, and this is for the 8-inch size. That's the size I'm doing. Then for your fabric 2, you will need 1 piece of 12 by 12, and then you'll need 2 pieces that are 9 by 9. For your fabric 3, you also need the same dimensions, so you need 1 12 by 12 and 2 9 by 9. And real quickly, we're going to swing back over here. For our thread, we're going to do just a contrasting thread, a different color thread that you want to stitch on your number 1 background fabric. And you're also going to need a pre-wound bobbin. And then you'll need fabric or thread that matches your number 2 fabric. And on your number 3 fabric, you will need a thread that matches that and one that's a little bit darker. You're going to cut a piece of battleizer that fits inside your hoops. So since all your hoop sizes are different, I can't really give you the dimensions of that, I'm sorry, but basically just cut the battleizer to fit your hoop. And I just have a little tip for you when you get started also. Sometimes because of the amount of stitching that is in some of the blocks, you may, if you can't get it tight enough in the hoop, it may shift a little bit in the hoop. So we have a really high-tech way of fixing that problem, and you're all probably going to laugh. You need to go into your kitchen cupboards. You need to get your shelf liner out, and you need to cut 4 strips of the rubber shelf liner that you can get at any store. Lots of different stores carry that. And you'll take those strips, and once you have the battleizer hooped, as you can see, it kind of puts an outline or indentation in the battleizer. And then you can take your shelf liner, and you may not need to do this, but if you have noticed any shifting or anything like that, it certainly is a very helpful little tip. So that is, I guess, the tip of the day. And I'll meet you at the sewing machine in just a moment. Okay, we're here at the machine, and your first step is to put water-soluble thread, which is the other type of thread that you'll need. You'll put that in the needle and you'll stitch out the outline of the design, which you can see here. I used a pink thread instead of water-soluble just so you can see it. And the only reason we have water-soluble here for the first step is because that's the thread we're going to use for our second step as well. You could use another colored thread if you want to, but that just means that you have to change the thread again. But I would normally start out with water-soluble thread. Our next step is we're going to take our background fabric number 1, and we are going to place this over the hoop, and we're going to stitch a tack down. So let's begin. Alright, here is my block with my background fabric number 1 stitched down, and I have trimmed it, and I trimmed it 1/4 inch on the inside. Any fabric that was maybe hanging on the outside of the block, I usually leave about at least 1/2 inch around the outside edge of the block. We'll trim it later. Step number 3 is to put your dark thread in the needle and stitch out the embroidery motif. For step 4, what you're going to do is thread your machine with water-soluble thread. And for 2 of the blocks, you're going to lay your fabric 2 here, and you're going to let us stitch the tack down stitch. For the other 2 blocks, you're going to alternate the fabric colors, and you're going to place fabric 3 here to begin with. To trim block 4, this section here that matches your background fabric, that meets your background fabric, you're going to trim that close right up to the stitching, just like I'm doing here. And on the other side, you're going to cut it so it's 1/4 of an inch. So cut that a scant 1/4 inch. Now that I have it all trimmed, this extra piece of fabric that we cut into this large 12-inch square for the 8-inch block, you're going to then take that when you do your second block and you will put that up here, and that'll save you on some fabric there. For step number 5, all you have to do is change your thread to thread that matches your fabric 3 and start sewing. For step number 6, you're going to put water-soluble thread in the needle, and you're going to take your fabric 3 in this case, and you're going to lay it over the entire area of the block, and you're going to sew the tack down stitch. Now that it is stitched my tack down stitch for fabric 3, what you're going to do is you are going to cut right up to the stitching on the area on the side that has another fabric, and in the lower left hand corner you're going to cut it a scant 1/4 inch. I'm going to put my thread 3M in the needle, and I'm going to stitch a beautiful motif in that yellow area. Your 2M thread in the machine, just in the needle. That would be your thread that matches your fabric 2, and it's going to sew a design down in this area. There's the stitching we did. You're going to put water-soluble thread in the needle, and you are going to take your fabric C, which in my case is this purple fabric. You're going to lay it right over this corner section, and it's going to sew a tack down stitch. Well, there's my corner all tacked down, and I trimmed real close to the stitching on the inside of the block. Now on the outside of the block, I left the fabric at least about 1/2 inch away from that outside stitch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thread that I used towards the beginning, it was my 1D thread, in the needle, and it's going to stitch a motif down in this area. This is our block. It's just about completed on the front, and what we're going to do now for step number 12 is you're going to put your water-soluble thread in the needle. On the back of the block is where we are going to be placing our backing fabric. I've already sprayed the back with temporary spray adhesive, so we're just going to center it over the block and let it stitch a basting stitch with the water-soluble thread. Hi, we're on our 13th and final step for this particular block. I've already put my backing fabric on using water-soluble thread, and on all of our blocks, once you get your backing fabric on, you need to make sure that your bobbin thread is going to match your needle thread. For the 13th step, you need to take your 3MD, which is your dark matching thread, to your number 3 fabric. And for me it's this color, so I will put this thread in the needle and the bobbin, and I'm going to stitch out the quilting. Okay, this is our completed block, and since this block is not the outside edge of the quilt and it has a quilt block joined to all 4 sides of it, we're going to use our embroidered block trimmer by George to trim all 4 sides. So you're going to finger press your fabric onto itself, and that exposes your battleizer, and then you're going to cut away all the batting as well as the backing fabric. So to use the trimmer by George, you finger press and you take that that crimped edge that on the side there right up to the basting stitch, and you lay that down, and then you just give the batting a little tug, and that gives you a straight edge to cut against.